One. Liftoff.
This SpaceX launch carried a small spacecraft.
And that will be followed shortly by the fairing deploy.
Once in orbit, that small craft, carrying its own cargo, was deployed. It looked a little like this from an earlier mission and an earlier version of that small spacecraft called a Sherpa.
Once this is all installed to Sherpa.
This is where the Sherpa was born, Spaceflight, based outside Seattle, one of the many growing commercial space companies. Spaceflight calls itself a space rideshare company.
Ignition of that second stage engine.
It looks for extra space on a rocket and then finds customers who want to put small satellites into orbit. Those satellites are attached to the Sherpa. It's all just small enough to take that extra space on the rocket for the ride to orbit. Tony Frago is the Senior Mission Director for Spaceflight.
You know, in the older days of space, it was very much these large, big spacecraft. And really there was a lot of smaller customers who really had a very challenging time to find a ride into orbit. And that's how Spaceflight basically started, is finding some of that extra capacity available and then finding unique ways to package those customers on that limited capacity.
Sherpa FX2 separation confirmed.
Spaceflight started with what folks in the space business call a free flyer. Its Sherpa would be deployed, sprung away from its ride to space. It would then float toward an orbit. At specific spots along the way, the Sherpa would release its cargo, those small satellites.
These are basically the root structure of what makes up our Sherpa OTV. You can see between the two of them, even though they have very different end uses, one of them as a propulsive vehicle, the other as a pure free flyer, they're identical in form right now. That was very much so intentional, so that we could have a very modular and flexible structure. Launch is still a very precious commodity in the market. And that's really something where we are trying to basically get as many customers up and serviced as part of that mission as we can. Sherpa enables us to do that, really allows us to be able to fit as many customers as we can onto a given spot that we have available. It affords us an opportunity to build out and do the integration work that we need to do here, so we don't have to do as much down at the launch site.
Now this company has added propulsion to its Sherpa, chemical and electric motors that will allow this little spacecraft to travel to a specific spot, a specific orbit. The company is even developing a Sherpa that can fly to the moon to put satellites in orbit there.
To go beyond low Earth orbit. So doing lunar insertions, examining more exotic orbit types is really what we're trying to proceed to with the Sherpa vehicle.
Spaceflight has hitched a ride on several SpaceX flights, but earlier this year, SpaceX said it is ending its relationship with the Seattle company. Spaceflight will have to find new launch providers, which in the growing space economy is getting easier each month. I'm David Curley. That's Full Throttle.